Welcome to Ireland Unfiltered. This week's guest is Eamon Dunphy. Eamon is, of course, well known for his views on many subjects and for his long career in journalism. The interview you're going to see talks about that, but I wanted to kind of get into some personal stuff, and it became quite a personal interview for Eamon, for me as well, because I've known Eamon for a long time, and it was a kind of an emotional roller coaster. But before we go to that, I'm joined here by Patrick Haughey, the producer of Ireland Unfiltered. And Patrick, you've got some news for loyal Ireland Unfiltered listeners.
I do indeed. So this is thanks to the show sponsor, Carlsberg Unfiltered. An unfiltered beer for a more natural taste, it's described as. We've 2 tickets to see all of the Live at the Ivy Gardens gigs this summer. So that's 10 gigs in total. Someone's going to be very busy.
You got all tickets for all the gigs?
All the gigs.
One person, you can get tickets for every gig in the Ivy Gardens.
That's right.
Okay.
And we've got, the acts, some fantastic acts. Sophie Ellis Bextor, Villagers, The Academic, Damo Dempsey, Burt Bacharach, Aslan, and many more. I don't think you're going to get as
many
diverse.
More a band?
What's that?
And many more a band?
I believe so, Dion. I believe so. I'm not familiar with their work. Apparently, their early stuff is very good.
First album is great.
Yes. So it's all live this summer. And what an array from Burt Bacharach to The Academic to Villagers to Damo Dempsey. I wish I could just see them all on stage at the same time. But anyway.
Eamon Dunphy's most recent cultural reference point for music was Billy Piper, which you'll see in the interviews. So I think Burt Bacharach is what you might see him at. But
exactly.
I'm not sure,
one of the greatest songwriters
Billy
of all
Piper
time.
Wasn't on that list.
Yeah, Burt Bacharach, I think he's a lot of people may not know. Go, oh, Burt, yeah, of course I know him, but you will know every single one of his songs. The guy's a legend. So anyway, fantastic prize, and we'll give you all the details you need to win that fantastic prize right after this episode with the inimitable Eamon Dunphy.
Thanks, Patrick. And now here's Eamon Dunphy. Eamon Dunphy, welcome to Ireland Unfiltered.
Thank you.
It's great to have you
here.
It's fabulous to have you here. Everybody knows your work over many years. Now, most recently with The Stand, the wonderful podcast that you do 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah, 4 or 5 times a week. Yeah.
And I was just wondering, what gets you out of bed in the morning now after your long career in journalism?
I like the challenge of journalism. I think there are lots of stories that we can do in the podcast in a way that they can't be done on radio or television, because you have a soundbite of maybe a 5-minute interview, maybe even a 10-minute interview. But long-form journalism is what it is, which means if there's a case like the Maurice McCabe case involving the Gardaí and a really scandalous situation, you can take 45 minutes with somebody like Mick Clifford, who'd been working on that case for 7 or 8 years, and you can go into it in detail. So the person who's listening and curious, what's this case about, they'll know definitively when the podcast has ended. And I think most of us are listening to sound bites on the drive time programs, on the Sean O'Rourke show, even on 6-1 News. You got this rushed interview. Prime time is always, I'm sure we'll come back to that, but they're always trying to do 3 stories in 35 minutes. You can't do that. So we'd take the 35, 40 minutes to do 1 story, and to do it with the best journalist you can get, which is hugely important. And I think if you listen to any of our podcasts on, say, Maurice McCabe with Mick Clifford, you'll know exactly what the story is. And, of course, we have our football podcasts with Didi Hammam, Liam Brady, John Giles. They really are very popular. These are the best analysts you can have, really. They were great players, all of them. They understand the game. They're very articulate. And their comments are unfiltered, and they're not afraid to call it. So I think people want that quality. Now, in John's case, I mean, John Giles was really cast out of RTE, which was kind of crazy. John's lucid. No one has more knowledge. People are fascinated by what he has to say, and he has his own way of saying it. And we get huge audiences for him, just me and him. Now, this is what the public wants. It wants intelligent, rigorous commentary on the events of any given day or week. And that's what we try to provide.
And you've always been driven by that idea that that's not being served to people elsewhere.
It's not. I mean, everybody deplores, in this country particularly, the quality of broadcast media. It's poor. You have this behemoth, RTE, radio, television, but it's not doing its job, really. It isn't good enough. They don't want to do it. They're beholden to the government in some way. They're part of official Ireland. They're part of the system. And in the case of Maurice McCabe, for example, they certainly weren't leading that story. Katie Hannon accepted on prime time. She was excellent, and she brought the story late in the day. But the Irish Examiner with Mick Clifford were on the story from the start. And there's a huge gap for long-form journalism done properly to inform the public, the listener, the people who matter in this country, who go to ballot boxes, who vote for this or that. Now, a lot of what RTE do in particular is dumbed down. I mean, in current affairs now, TV3 or Virgin Media, as it's now called, with the Ivan Yates, Matt Cooper show, I mean, they do 4 solid hours of news of current affairs every week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 1 hour shows, good guests. If you look at something like the Children's Hospital calamity, they've done it really well. Primetime is on twice a week and not on at all in the summer.
Yeah.
Well, what's RTE doing? And I'm not focusing in on them in any kind of grudgy way, but I pay my licence fee.
Has anything changed?
I don't pay my licence fee to see Miriam O'Callaghan or David McCullough saying, well, we've got to hurry up now. Sorry, we've no time for that. We'll come back to that another time. This is unsatisfactory. Why not do the job properly?
And when you talk about the Children's Hospital or things like that, do you think anything has changed? Do you think Ireland is a fairer place today than the Ireland you grew up in?
No, it isn't. Well, the Ireland I grew up in was a pretty unfair place. But it certainly, when the Sunday Independent, for example, was at its very, very best, with your father being the editor of it, Angus Fanning, it was a great newspaper. And it was taking on causes, and its big cause, or one of its big causes, was terrorism in the north, in pursuit of a united Ireland. It was campaigning journalism, and campaigning journalism is necessary. Now, I don't smell a whiff of campaigning journalism coming from RTE or indeed from independent newspapers anymore.
Can I ask you about, you touched on terrorism there, but there's been a suggestion recently about the Brexit process and bringing out a new strain of Anglophobia in Ireland.
Yes.
Like your life story, and if you read your book, The Rocky Road, it is almost a story about your cultural affinity with England and how that separated you and like certain and people like you in Ireland from official Ireland. Do you think that's on? Do you think it is on the rise again, that Anglophobia?
I think it's being played to.
Yeah.
I mean, we had an incident just yesterday where Donald Tusk made a particularly cutting comment about the Brexiteers. And our own Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, was standing beside him, and he sneeringly said afterwards, the British press will get you tomorrow for that. Now, that's all very well and good, but there has been a sense of Varadkar and the present government playing to the green gallery And yes, the Brexiteers are a pretty repellent lot. Some of them, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson, and others in that wing of the Tory party, they are not particularly nice people, and they were always there. And Theresa May has had to hove in their direction to keep.
Or she chose to anyway.
Well, she had to keep her party whole and together, and that's a choice she made. But to imagine that their representative of England or English people is a mistake. They are toughs. They have an attitude. They are condescending to Ireland. But that isn't the whole story, or even the biggest part of the story. We've always had an affinity with the English. We've had a common travel area since 1921. That's a privilege. Our people, generation after generation, went to England in search of work. In my case, in search of work in football. But I know the English people. So hating England, I regard as foolish, stupid, futile. Hating anybody is stupid and futile. But I think the sentiment now that has arisen because of Brexit is, I don't think Irish people are comfortable with it. I noted Bertie Ahern, for example, in the last few days in an interview, said he didn't like the edge of Anglophobia that was around the government and maybe one or two people in the media. Interestingly, Micheál Martin rebuked Donald Tusk for his comment about England and a special place in hell. And Micheál Martin is the leader of Fianna Fáil, a Republican party. He didn't want anything to do with that kind of stuff. Neither did Bertie Ahern.
But is there two elements to this as well? Because you talk about the relationship with England, and then there's a relationship with the unionist people in Northern Ireland, which seems to have been damaged too. And we had Micheál Martin on this show, and he talked about his journey as a Republican from being a sneaking regarder, as he put it, to somebody now who would be, like has reached that position where he is taking a stand against like Anglophobia and that kind of stuff. But there seems to be another force at work again and at rise. Like English nationalism is there, but Irish nationalism never went away too. And you have Mary McDonald talking about the unionists need to prepare for United Ireland. Like, what kind of United Ireland is that?
No, there is this push for a border poll, which is being led by Sinn Féin. It's provided for in the Good Friday Agreement. It's provided for at a moment when there is likely to be consent. We are a million miles away from that moment. It's opportunistic, it's nasty, it's provocative. It would cause terrible trouble for our people, north and south. If it were to happen, it won't happen because I don't think people in the south will vote for it, frankly. If it were to happen, our economy would be destroyed. We'd have over 1 million dissident unionists. The UDA and the UVF haven't gone away, and I don't blame them. Why should they go away when they have this threat looming over them that they'll wake up one morning and find themselves in Northern Ireland? This is the madhouse talk. But there are a lot of sneaking regarders for that kind of republicanism around, and a lot of them are wearing nice suits and are going on to posh programs on RTE, and they're slithering around the place. So we have to deal with that. It's one of the consequences of Brexit, because before Brexit we had enjoyed 20 years of the best relationship we'd ever had with the UK, and we want and need to have a strong and vibrant and working relationship with the United Kingdom. We need it for our people. They're our closest neighbours, and as you pointed out, Micheál Martin and indeed Bertie Ahern, our people, leaders of a Republican movement here that want a good relationship with the English people and a good, strong and respectful relationship with the unionist people in the north as well. The DUP are not entirely representative of that, no more than Sinn Féin are representative of most Irish people. You only have to look at the polls to see exactly how many people they represent.
Do you think England has changed, though, from the country you knew?
Yes, it has. It has changed, undoubtedly. Immigration has changed it.
Yeah.
And its diminished place in the world has changed it. I mean, it's an old saying, but England lost an empire and has never quite found a role in the modern world. But it is still our closest neighbour. It's still, in terms of our culture, the language, our relationship with them, and their football teams, their musicians, the Beatles, the Stones, or Billy Piper.
That's not even that
Okay.
modern. That's not the most modern reference.
No, but the point is we are
I know.
part of the Anglophone world.
We're culturally
Yes.
deeply connected to that.
Yes, indeed. And it's a futile and rather small-minded thing to be anti-English, I think.
Yeah.
It's not who we are.
And you never had that growing up. That
No,
wasn't
my
part
mother
of it.
was an ardent Republican.
Yeah.
God bless her, and she certainly did. And my father, I think in 1969, after Bloody Sunday, was going to get a bus up to Derry and join the
Him
IRA.
and your brother went to the British Embassy.
My brother and father went to the British Embassy the night it was burned
Yeah.
down.
After Bloody Sunday.
After Bloody Sunday, yes. But that's sort of...
But you wore a black armband at that stage.
I did, yes. But that was a protest against, the murder of people in Derry by the paratroopers. But I didn't consider that act reflected what the British people wanted.
No.
I found that they didn't really even know about it, which is why I wore the black armband.
Yeah.
Hey guys, last week you went to an Irish town and you murdered 14 people. And this is why I'm wearing it, if you want to know.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, we were playing at Norwich on the day. No one said a word to me.
Yeah.
In any
Really?
way, shape or form. No.
But you compare that, say, to someone like James McLean and the stick he gets for not wearing a poppy.
Yeah, well, it didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
I admire James McLean for his for being true to his beliefs. I don't share them, but I'd wear a poppy.
But it always struck me, I lived in London for a long time, and, the poppy thing seems to be very strange because you would see very few people in a city like London actually wearing a poppy.
Yes.
And yet there is this sort of dogmatic edict from the media now
Well,
that
probably
everyone
if you were
must-
going into a TV studio, they'd stick a poppy on you.
Yeah, but the people aren't walking around.
No.
If half of them aren't wearing poppies.
No, but they do feel, and rightly, the regard and respect for people who gave their lives in the First World War and who gave their lives in the Second World War. Don't forget, England has made incredible commitments and made huge sacrifices in the interests of peace and in the interests of Europe, really. And if they hadn't faced Hitler at a certain point, who knows what language we'd be speaking today, Dion. But the point is, yes, England has a horrendous colonial past, and England is probably responsible, or Britain, for the state of the Middle East, wherever they've been, whether it's Africa, Middle East, the carnage wreaked by colonialism is part of our lives today. There's no denying that. But at the same time, you have to look at the bigger picture and see them as neighbours. And there is no profit in hating, and there is no profit in bitterness for a person or a country. You can't build your life and your society on the basis of a grudge.
Take me back then. We moved away from it a bit to when you were growing up, and you said you were the only real poor family.
Yes,
in your
in that
neighborhood.
area, yeah.
And you were poor.
We were. Yeah. We were, and if you're poor and you live, say, in the inner city, and everyone around you and your neighbours are all in the same boat, it's one thing, and it's a tough thing, but there's a solidarity there, and you don't feel out of place. We were living in an area which was lower middle class in Drumcondra, and that meant that that in a way I was sort of, and my brother and father, we were isolated a bit. There was no one else living in a tenement in Drumcondra.
So you felt like an outsider.
Yeah, we felt certainly. Well, I mean, the physical thing was you ran out of money on Tuesday or Wednesday. You had to go to the pawn shop, and you didn't have the best clothes, and you didn't get toys at Christmas other than, a little bow and arrow or something. I mean, you didn't have a bike when other guys had a bike. These are small things, but they are. They're not really unimportant things.
No.
And so, I would have been shaped by that.
When I read your book and when I read it again this week before this interview, I was struck by a thing you say a few times about your childhood, that you would say, short of bereavement or illness, these were the worst, when your father was on broken time or wouldn't get work, these were the worst things that could happen to you. Yeah. And it seemed to me that the trauma you had as a child was that uncertainty. Like you didn't have the bereavement or illness, but you had an ongoing trauma, if you like, of what's going to happen next.
Yeah, if it was raining, you knew your dad wasn't getting paid.
Yeah.
And for a long time, the spectre of eviction hung over the house or the room that we lived in, which was terribly important to all of us because we wanted to be in that community. My mother wanted me to be near a good school for my brother and for me. It was very important in her mind, and I think she was right, not to be maybe 200, 300 yards down the road in a place called Ballybuck, which is actually in the inner city. And that difference was huge to her, and I think she was incredibly wise. That we went up the road to St. Patrick's School, where PJ Mara, Bertie Ahern, and many people who have made a contribution to various things lived, went to school, and we were lucky we were part of that, rather than being in the inner city and being part of something else.
Yeah. But you were a watchful child, I think you described it. Like, was your intelligence part of that? Because, you could see around corners, you could anticipate what could go wrong in a way that maybe less intelligent people wouldn't.
I suppose if the street is your playground, the street's a tough place, and I was a street kid because there was nothing to be in the house for, so I was a street kid. But then most kids were in those days. They had to go out. The street was where it was, where the action was. Where I got my watchfulness from, I suppose, was knowing, that I had to be on my toes. I had to be better at something than my circumstances, or my circumstances would pin me to the floor. So football was my thing. And actually going to school and being good in class was my thing as well. So, okay, I may be coming from, not a great room, and not much in it, but I'll be good at that, the school, or I'll be good at football, So that was a driver, I suppose, in me to overcome what you might call were challenging circumstances, but only challenging materially. On the upside, I had wonderful parents, loving, nurturing, supportive parents. So nobody gets the whole package. You could be living in a mansion with, parents who didn't give a toss about you, and that's, a feature of English life, funny enough. Not just English life, Irish life at a certain level. So you know, all in all, I got more than most. So I don't bang on about the deprivation because it was material. And you can always get over that. It's the emotional deprivation that you never get over, and we never suffered from that.
Well, no, but that sense of watchfulness kind of has stayed with you through your life.
It
Like
has.
you would describe yourself as a worrier, wouldn't you?
I'd be a kind of, I'd be a worrier in the sense that I would, I'd be fussy about my work. I'd be determined that it would be as good as I could make it. But I'd be kind of extremely unfussy about my social life, and I'd go and have a good time, and I suppose
But that's
there'd
almost
be a bit of rock and roll there.
Yeah, but that's a way of alleviating the worry and getting away from
Yes,
worry
it is.
too, isn't
Yeah.
it? A bit of adrenaline's a great cure for worry.
Yeah, I mean, when the job's done, in my younger days, I would have been out and about and having a bit of fun.
My dad used to quote Raymond Smith, who used to say,
Yeah.
adrenaline's great stuff if you can get your hands on it.
Yeah, Raymond was a great colleague of ours, a legend in journalism, and your father was very fond of him.
But that intelligence and that, you went to school and there was a teacher there, Mr. Hayden,
Yes.
who recognised that
Yes.
and encouraged you and got you to read out your
Yes, he
work
did,
in
yes.
class. How did that go down in the classroom? Like, did you feel like, was intelligence appreciated in the classroom?
I think if you displayed intelligence in a certain way, I don't think being a SWAT or being a know-all, nobody likes that. But certainly I think he was aware that I wasn't the dummy, but he was also aware of our family circumstances. And I didn't have the best clothes on. And in the winter, you could see that other kids had stuff like shoes and stuff that were better. And I mean, the deprivation for kids who come from poor families, your trousers are not quality. You'd have patches on your trousers. They were thin, so you'd feel the cold. There are things that even now, and particularly now in Ireland, in our 3-tier or 10-tier society, or in Britain, I'm sure, the kind of everyday hurt of poverty is not having a vest, or your shoes are letting water into your feet, or, the arses out of your trousers, almost literally. And people are living with that now, and there's no need to. One of the great things that's happened, I suppose, thanks to Dunnes Stores and these other retail outlets, you can actually buy a pair of jeans and they last you forever. And there's you can buy good vests and a good jacket that will see you through the winter. They didn't exist when I was growing up. They actually didn't exist. Denim and stuff like that, only in the movies. So you'd have this sort of awful pair of grey trousers that would last until, get them in September and they'd be gone by November, and you have to make them last until the following June. That's a thing, and if you walk into class, and kids, as you know, they talk about bullying now and the new media, social media, but if you walk into school with less than the other kids, you feel it acutely.
But you mentioned there about how football and intelligence were kind of going to be your things. They were the things that sort of you felt could take you somewhere. But I was wondering, it was really, when did you realise that intelligence almost, it was almost something that wasn't looked upon as, you were almost, it was almost a nuisance for a kid from your background. They didn't encourage intelligence. There was no pathway.
No, there was no pathway really in educational terms.
Yeah,
I was blocked.
You got a scholarship for a year.
A 1-year scholarship, which I think is tantamount to child cruelty. A 1-year scholarship gives you 1 year in a secondary school, after which you depart onto the streets.
Which is what you did.
I did, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
not have any choice.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was kind of make your mind up time, really. And I made my mind up. I could have gone to a technical college and got a trade. That would have taken a couple of years.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what my brother did later, and he became a plumber, my late brother Kevin. But I said, no, I'm going to be a messenger boy and put all my eggs in the one basket of being good enough as a schoolboy footballer to play for Ireland and get an opportunity to go to an English club, because that was the basket where all the eggs were. It was a big gamble. And if I had plan B was the British Army.
Yeah.
For 9 years. You had to sign up for 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah. But there was a guy in our area, a fella called McNally, who'd done it. He was a few years older than me, but he used to come home on leave with a big tan and wads of English fivers and tenors, and all the girls loved him, and he was having a great time.
Yeah.
Now, it was 9 years, but I was up for it.
Right.
And, well, there was a career there in the RAF, for example.
Yeah.
But you had to have educational stuff that I didn't have. So it looked like it was going to be the army. But I was up for that. Because I thought what I was up for was, give me a chance where I can, if I have to work hard, I will work hard. Give me a shot at something where there's a level playing field, and I'll go for it.
Yeah.
And
But
the army was it.
That was the only level playing field you could find.
Yeah, there was no way here. I mean, you
Yeah.
couldn't get a job without an education.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get an education unless, you know,
You said there
you
was
had money.
You said there was an apartheid system in place, effectively.
Well, it was,
for
yeah,
education.
and it's still in place.
Yeah.
And education is the point where really the injustices of society are cemented, because kids from certain backgrounds don't get to go to second level or third level. They just drift off, and they're kind of discounted straight away. And that's maybe half the population, or maybe 3/4 of the population, although more and more now kids are going to colleges that give you nothing. They give you a diploma, a piece of something after you've been in the DIT, and if you don't have the right attitude and the hunger, you won't even make it as a waitress or a waiter or a barman or anything. So these diplomas are worthless, really. But that's the way the bosses keep the score. And if you're a kid from the inner city now, you've got as much chance as I had, which is 0.
Yeah.
0.
You don't think it's changed?
It hasn't changed. It's got worse. Because now the gap between the haves and have-nots is wider. There certainly wasn't 10,000 people homeless and 3,500 children among them living in bed and breakfast hotels in Gardner Street when I was growing up.
But you came very close to losing
Well, we
it all.
came close, but nothing. Like, we didn't come close to that. I mean, that means you've nowhere to play. You've nowhere to go out to. You're stuck in a room. Your mother may have to go an hour in a bus to take you to school, come back, walk around the streets all day. This is what's happening now to 10, 12, 13, 14,000 people, because they're massaging the numbers. And you have to be out at 9 o'clock in the morning of a lot of those places. And your mother's walking around maybe with another small child all day in the cold, in the rain. And then she's got to go another hour journey to pick you up from school. And you've got to come home, and you've got to sit in this hotel room.
Do you think there's a class basis to it, that the people
is a
like
class
Brad
basis.
Kerr and Owen Murphy and these people don't get it?
They don't get it because they never had to do it. I mean, they've no idea of the deprivation, and they are extremely right-wing. They think you get what you deserve in life, and you don't get what you deserve in life. They think with the right attitude you can do anything. Well, that's not true. And if you're a single mother, for example, if you're a traveller, if you're in some category that doesn't fit their favoured demographic, then they don't give a fuck. Fuck you. And then they wonder why there's all this delinquency.
Yeah.
Why are these people selling drugs?
Yeah.
And why are they robbing things? And why are they fighting?
Yeah.
Because that's what you've left them. Nothing. And it's a much more vicious society now. Because don't forget, we have much more in the way of material things that we could give to people to alleviate the hurt. And it is hurt of deprivation. And it's to just live in a city where there are 10,000 adults, and it's more. They massage in the numbers to keep it below 10,000. And 3,000 or 4,000 young children living in these circumstances every single day and night, all the year around, with no hope of a home, no hope of a normal childhood. What sort of misery and destruction is that building up for 15 years' time?
Yeah.
When those kids will remember the hurt, they'll know that they haven't had the life they should have had, that they haven't had any real life at all. Now, are they going to turn out to be good citizens? No, they're not. And they're the problem for future generations.
Did what happened to you with education, and you've touched on it there, did that inform everything you did in your work? Because you saw how difficult it was for you, and then you encountered people throughout. There must have been, as you got older, you must have had regrets about or wondered about not going to college. And did you see people then who had a certain air of kind of superiority, but nothing to be superior about, but who had advanced because of where they came from? And that seemed to inform a lot of, like, I always felt you had a clarity of again, picking out the spoofers and the bullshitters.
Yeah.
But it was informed by that kind of experience, I always thought.
Well, I kind of I've always been a happy person.
Yeah.
I've never been morose. I've always been sort of hard worker, no problem, working hard. I never felt classist in terms of, I didn't dislike people because they'd been to university or they had these affectations, which there was plenty of them around, and there still are, there always will be. I'm not a hater, really. I'm just sort of...
Were you angry?
No.
No.
Not really.
Would you say that's a myth about you, that you were angry?
Well, anyone who knows me knows that I'm kind of, most of the time I'm laughing. But when I put me pen and paper on the desk and I go down to work, then I can certainly be determined. But I actually think anger is don't get angry, get even, would be my thing.
Yeah.
And I worked for your father, and he was brilliant. I mean, he certainly channeled my disapproval, shall we say, of people like Mary Robinson. Look at her now, for God's sake. I mean, look, we better not go there. But the likes of Official Ireland, the grandees who think they run the place, who do run the place, I would like to remind the reader, this is what they really are. And there was a lot of them. The heroes of the nation, who are celebrated, lauded, allowed to pontificate ad nauseum about what we should and shouldn't be doing. And I did one useful thing in journalism. I coined the phrase Official Ireland. And that's what they are. They are really what, in our foolishness, many of us think, not me, but many think, they are people we should be proud of.
Yeah.
And I think they are useless actors.
And were you difficult to work with, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it's very. I was with your father for a long time. I've been with the Irish Daily Star for a long time. I was with RTE for 40 years. But I did walk out of jobs, yeah. Because if you didn't have the right boss, who didn't really share your prejudices. I mean, your dad did share them. There were two guys that gave me a career. Angus Fanning as the editor of the Sunday Independent, and Tim O'Connor, who was the head of television sport in RTE. They were two fantastic people. They were two strong and rebellious people themselves, really. Tough guys, though. And Tim was a monster. Like, he hated. And God rest the two of them. They both died from the same illness, remarkably. But without those guys, I would definitely have been up there with Christy Kinahan. Yeah, and the Monk. I'd be in there somewhere pitching. Now, that's for sure. Because I wouldn't have got a job. I wouldn't work for any other bums. But they gave me... Now, I left the Sunday Independent and I left RTE and maybe...
But did you stay in touch with... Like, cause were you in touch with my dad, like, in later years? No.
No, I wasn't really, because there was, you know, the Sunday Independent's a broad church, and they went after me.
Well, I remember doing a story. I got Terry Venables went after you. The story.
But I didn't mind that. I mean, I thought that was part of the game. Yeah, I mean, I went after Terry Venables too, but I didn't really. I loved your father, as you know, and never lost my respect for him, our affection for him. But sometimes I was off doing other things, and the newspaper certainly didn't forgive me for leaving for a while. But I didn't. If I met him, or I met someone from the news, I used to meet guys who'd be writing horrendous stuff about me in the Sunday in the paper, who had been colleagues of mine, and Willie Keeley and Liam Collins, guys like that. But I remember sitting in the Unicorn at the height of the Celtic Tiger, and two of the worst torturers were having dinner across the way, and I said to Giorgio, give us the bill, and I sent him over a bottle of champagne. I just didn't want to. I wasn't bitter.
No,
I understood that they had to do what they had to do, and that's the way the game's played. But I was rebellious. You say, was I difficult to work with? I was rebellious about everything at times, but I never found your father difficult to work for, or Tim O'Connor. It would have been other things around them, not them.
But they would have had to deal with those difficulties, so they might have found it difficult.
Yeah, I don't think your dad wanted me to leave, and I don't think Tim wanted me to leave when I did leave. I went back to Tim, and I would have gone back to your dad if circumstances had been, but they were flying without me. They didn't need me.
Do you have any bitterness or sense of regret about RTE leaving this, like, last year?
Not really. I mean, I wanted to leave for a few years, and they didn't really want what I was doing. They didn't really like the kind of rigorous stuff. They didn't want John. He was thrown out. Bill was thrown out too. But Bill dressed it up as retirement. He was very sad about it, and he didn't want to give it. There was no reason why he should have. Bill was just very, very good. Yeah. And I was kind of champing it a bit. And I said 2 years before I left that I wanted to leave. And Glenn Killan was the head of television then. He'd been the head of sport. And he said, come on, don't do it. And gave me a little rise. But then a new head of sport came in. And I knew he wanted to get rid of me. He didn't want any of this. And I didn't want any of him.
And why was that? Well, you said before that your influence was waning. Like, why was that?
I think because they didn't understand why Giles, Brady, O'Herlihy and me worked. And Souness at times, and Didi. They didn't understand why that worked. And they didn't want it. And And I told the guy who came in, whose name, his head of sport, I can't remember. Declan McBennett, yeah. Good old Declan. I said, look, this is what you need to do this job. You need knowledge of the game. You need to be able to express yourself articulately. And you need the balls to call it the way you see it without fear of favour. And if you don't have those things and you don't have the support for those things, there's no point in doing the job. And he was looking at me and I could see his eyes glazing over. I don't want that man. Yeah. And I didn't want him.
But what bit of that do you think they found most difficult? The idea that...
Well, I think the idea that we might be challenging Martin O'Neill.
Yeah, you said that. You said that you were, before the Euros,
I was
somebody
asked,
said go easy on Martin.
Yes.
So you said, you know, there was this idea of going easy on Martin, but you mentioned when you talked about that, you know, in '96 when Michelle Smith was winning gold medals, there was a similar kind of atmosphere around. So you would have experienced it before. Like, what was different about it this time that made you feel, right, the writing's on the wall here?
Well, I think the Michelle Smith thing was a one-off. And the country, and indeed President Clinton and Mary Robinson, they all bought in. And, you know, Tom Humphreys and David Walsh were heroic, and Paul Kimmage, I think, also, in what they did. But RTE didn't want to disturb the mood of the nation. Now, that was over something huge. Now RTE had gone to the stage where they didn't want to disturb Martin O'Neill, which is different, and Roy Keane. Let me tell you something about your own father.
Not again.
Angus Fanning and Tim O'Connor.
Okay.
Both of them didn't like positivity. What they liked was good writing or articulate dissent from the herd. And what the audience wants is an honest expression of your opinion based on your knowledge. I started my podcast 2 years ago with a view to getting out of there,
right,
so that I could continue to do my work as a journalist the way I saw fit. And I wasn't having any suit tell me how to work.
You mentioned Keane there. You said in an interview recently that you knew the whole story about Saipan. What is it?
Well, that's a good question. I think what I know about Saipan now that I didn't know then was there were some people, John and Liam Brady, John Giles, and I think Mark Lawrenson was another one who I used to have on my show, The Last Word radio show. They all felt that Keane didn't really want to be there, that he was tormented, and he was looking for a way out. Now, I thought that was rubbish. I really did, because he'd done more than anybody to get us there. So they felt he had self-destructed on his own.
Yeah.
And I felt that Mick McCarthy should have managed the situation and that he had overreacted to the Tom Humphreys interview that Keane gave, which was the catalyst.
Yeah, or mismanaged it anyway.
Yes, and I think managers should manage. He should have managed to keep Keane there. And I knew that Keane had, at the very last minute, through the physio, Mick Byrne, he had said, look, I'll stay.
Yeah.
And that had been rejected. So the whole story, I suppose, is that there was a bit of right in what John Liam felt, that he was way out of order, that he kind of almost self-destructed on purpose.
And how did you feel, like, witnessing it and being close to it? Because we talked about adrenaline earlier.
Yeah,
like,
there's another element of it too.
I
mean, Roy arrived in camp on the night of the Zidane scored the winner in the Champions League final. And I was doing the last interview for the book.
I remember seeing you there that day.
Yes.
In the team hotel.
Yeah. And he was raging because of something that happened with Niall Quinn's testimonial in Sunderland. And there'd been some very bad publicity that he hadn't turned up for a charity, saying he couldn't turn up because he was crippled with a hip injury. So that was part of the Saipan brew that never really got mentioned.
But did you feel like, because you were doing that book, was there a part of you that thought, this is great for my book?
No. I really didn't. I mean, I didn't. I actually didn't.
No.
I mean, that would be mad. I wanted him to stay. I rang him when he came home because Michael Kennedy, his minder, his lawyer, said, "Will you ring him?" And I rang him, and he said, "Well, what should I do?" I said, "Do what you feel is right for you." I said, "Don't mind all this clamour for you to go back.
Yeah.
If you feel like going back, go back." But I said, "You have a long trip back there. Do what you feel is right, and you won't be have any remorse afterwards." And he stayed at home
Yeah.
and did the Tommy Gorman interview. So he asked me about Tommy. I said, "Well, I think he's a pretty good journalist, straightforward. I think it won't do you any harm to explain to people at home."
It didn't do him any harm, really.
No, he explained to people at home what the issues are, why you felt what you did. So I kind of, I think it was a great chance to win the World Cup, and I wish he'd stayed.
But once he was back, you felt going back was
Well, it wasn't my
pointless.
place. I didn't think to put a gun to his head, not that I was in a position to, but I just felt that what I think you should always do is do what you believe is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And the right thing to do for you and for your colleagues.
Yeah.
And that's what he did.
When you had Richard Dunn on the stand a while ago, you talked about Keane, and you're talking about, he said he was a convert to the other thing, and sometimes they're the worst. You're talking about when he gave up drinking. What did you mean by that?
I don't remember saying it, but I think probably some people who've had, drink stuff and problems, maybe like people who convert to Catholicism, they're the most zealous.
Yeah.
There may be an element of that, I think there's a certain intolerance about Roy that's evident now in his dealing with players and media and all things. And actually I found him and his family, children, his wife, lovely people. He was fine in the house, a real good father and a decent guy.
Yeah.
But there's an intolerance for the world almost, you sense of Roy, that the whole world is, and it's become his shtick now.
And it's become more, do you think it's become more pronounced?
Yes. And intolerance is not good
Yeah.
in any person. You have to tolerate, because none of us are without flaws, faults, and all the rest of the things. So a degree of tolerance, particularly when you're in authority, as he is with footballers in his coaching roles. I think he is intolerant would be a good description of him. And intolerance is not good.
And it's no good for a manager.
Oh, absolutely not, no. I mean, he's not really made to manage, no.
And is he made to be a pundit?
I'm not impressed by his punditry. Now, to be fair to him, he's working in England where you don't really get time, so you're soundbiting it. But he comes out with these, because he's such a great player and a great and knowledgeable player on the pitch. People, pay a lot of attention to what he has to say. And he comes out with these blunt assessments that are kind of headline grabbing, but perhaps not as thoughtful as you'd hoped for. Now, maybe there isn't time on ITV to be thoughtful, but he calls it makes a headline. But I wouldn't be mad to switch on if there was Liam Brady, Graham Souness, Steedy Hammam, John Giles, and Roy Keane.
Yeah.
I'd watch all the others before I'd watch him, because they'd be telling me what's happening, whereas he'd be telling me, something else.
When did you become a Liverpool fan?
I was always
Were you
a
all a
Liverpool
Liverpool fan? Were you?
Yeah, I think it's a great club.
Yeah.
I mean, you've only got to watch them singing, the song
Yeah.
before the game and see the faces to know that this is not Old Trafford and that these people are not eating prawn sandwiches, that they're genuine Liverpudlians, they're working people, and, the song itself and the lyrics of it and, Walk On to the Rain, all of that. They are people I can identify with.
Yeah.
And it's a club I can identify with. And and they have produced great teams, and they play the game the way it should be played.
But it seems to become more pronounced. I was wondering if it was a family thing as well. Is it something?
No, and my son and my grandson are Liverpool fans. I think the word would be authentic.
Yeah.
They're authentic
Yeah.
in a way that Manchester United aren't. And that's not to say that I haven't got the greatest respect for what Manchester United is, what it means to people, what it was, its traditions, its history, the great players that have been there. I do. But there's something corporate about Manchester United. And sometimes when you look at the faces of the fans, they're from Korea or China or wherever. And I think that remark Keane made about the prawn sandwich munchers and the lack of atmosphere at certain European games was very acute and right. So it's more a shrine. Now Anfield isn't a shrine. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing, and you feel all the people there from Liverpool.
But I was wondering, you mentioned I'm wondering if, like, when you see people, like when you have a connection with your kids or your grandkids, if they support them, that must make it more important too.
Yeah,
to you.
well,
Like,
it's we're all in the same boat,
Yeah.
and so we can phone each other during the games and complain about Lublin or somebody or Moreno if he's playing. But no, I am a Liverpool fan.
because you're now getting a stick from it from John Giles on the stand,
on the
you know.
podcast. Yeah, he said to me, you should stop saying you're a Liverpool fan. Manchester United fans will stop listening to the podcast. I hope not. But because it's the thing I love the most is football, and I have a love for Manchester United. I wrote a book about Manchester United, which is the best thing I ever did.
Matt Busby book.
Yeah, and which is sadly out of print. But it's a great club, Manchester United. But it was sort of taken over by. It is now a corporation, and it's an extremely, avaricious corporation, and doesn't mean you don't love what it was. Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law, Best, and Giggs, Keane, Van Nistelrooy, all the great players that played there. Manchester United has given so much joy and pleasure, and they deserve their place in the world of football very much. But Liverpool's my team.
And you said that you were always a very hands-on parent.
Yeah.
Like you're always close to your kids. You always read to them at night, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That was something you were always very focused on.
Yeah, because it's such an important obligation. It's such a joy to have access to your children and to be able to nurture them insofar as you can and to support them insofar as you can. I had the benefit of that myself as a child, and I wanted to, and I wanted to be that kind of parent, and I wanted my children to be that kind of parent, and they are. So I think that's a huge thing to do, and it's beyond price. You cannot put a price on that sort of relationship between a parent and a child. And it's one of the most appalling things about watching parents suffer now in our present circumstances with the housing crisis, how difficult it is for those women and men, to be just so tired and weary that they haven't got the sort of energy, and their children, you just hope that. But then, you just wish that people weren't living the way they are now, like laboratory rats, and Mac Williams coined a phrase about breakfast roll man and all of that stuff. And parents now are out all day giving their children over to childminders or creches, and where they should be maybe having on a Monday to Friday basis a passing acquaintance with their kids, you know, and the new media, the kids will be, you know, in their rooms and families. We're storing up, I think, grave problems for the future because of how we are torturing people now. And I'm not talking about people who are poor, but I'm talking about people who are well off and in good jobs. But the jobs are so demanding, and people are travelling from Carlow to Dublin. You know, or you're a nurse. Look at what you have to do to survive. You know, so you know, capitalism and materialism are stripping away bits of our soul, bit by bit. And at what point will we become soulless altogether? We seem to be moving into that age.
How many grandkids have you?
I have, let me think, 4.
4. And are you kind of devoted to them? And
well, I don't find, whenever I see people talk about being a grandparent is wonderful and the best thing of all, I think it is wonderful because you see these lovely little children. But I've never got the kick out of being a grandfather that I got out of being a father.
Really?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's just, maybe it's me.
Yeah.
It's
the same because you had the kick out, because people say that the cliche is that a grandparent has, you know, all the kind of love without any of the duty.
Yeah, I think the love goes with the obligation.
Yeah.
What I see now are just little fellows walking around who can't have a chat with me. But I know I'm fine. I mean, of course, I love my grandchildren deeply and care for them deeply. Yeah. But being the actual parent was the thing that I enjoyed the most.
Talk to me about, you've mentioned a couple of people you lost. Talk to me about losing people as you get older and what that makes you reflect on.
Oh dear, it does make you reflect a lot. I mean, your father was one, Tim O'Connor was another, PJ Mara, who died recently, Anthony Cronin, who was a great friend of your father's, the poet, Tom Murphy, playwright. Yeah. They were all dear friends of mine. And people that I shared lots of things with, and you miss them because you might, you just miss them, and you wish you'd spent more time with them. I mean, I was a bit estranged from your dad for the last years. I was a bit estranged from Tim O'Connor, strangely enough. Right. Yeah, from the last years, just, you know, when the intensity of their work and my work, you know, just lose things. And even Tony Cronin and Tom, who I saw quite a bit, you do kind of, you have to resist, on the one hand, the temptation to be maudlin about it, but on the other hand, there were really amazing people, really strong, gifted, tough-minded, and I to say this is it's the first. There are not people like them in the positions that they occupied today, which is like an alpha saying things are not what they used to be. But the media world that we occupied is definitely not a place they would have tolerated or been comfortable in. They'd have blown up some of the guys that we've passingly mentioned out of the water.
Did the call, you talk about the estrangement, did you have a regret about that when you, because
yes,
it meant a great deal. I know, like when I saw you and my family saw you at Angus's funeral, it meant a huge amount because we knew they were estranged, yes, but yet you were a big part of his life for so long.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it must cause you some regret that.
Oh, it does. Yes, it does. It does. Yeah, it does. But the media world is a difficult world, particularly to keep friendships, you know, and but of course I was there, and of course I was devastated when I heard that he was ill, and it is a fact, Dion, that sometimes things happen and you don't really understand them, and they don't begin to resonate with you for years until after, and you look back then. And don't look back with rose-tinted glasses. Look back in a cold, clear-eyed way and say, those guys were something, you know. And I miss them because, and also I'm grateful to them because I've had a charmed professional life, absolutely charmed, because there ain't too many in the media business that go around saying good old Amo for some reason. I don't know why.
Does death frighten you?
Death is the inevitable. Does it frighten me? No, because I won't be around. What you might properly say, I think, is the sense of loss you will feel and others will feel not being with them anymore, and not being around. I can't think of a more interesting place than living, or a better thing to do. So yes, I mean it does. It's an inevitability. I think I'll be extremely philosophical when the moment comes, and who knows? I might meet up with some old friends. This time we'll really have a party.
Eamon, that was fantastic. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure, yeah.
Well, certainly feel like I've been through the emotional ringer after that interview, and Patrick is still with me with news of this incredible competition.
Also went through the emotional ringer. It was a fantastic interview, by the way.
Thank you.
Great listening. So, yeah, for the competition, as we mentioned at the very start of the show, this is for listeners of Ireland Unfiltered, our loyal listeners. We've got tickets to all of the Ivy Gardens gigs this summer to give away, and that's thanks to our show sponsors, Carlsberg Unfiltered. So all you need to do to be in with a chance of winning is to log on to JOE.ie /Ireland Unfiltered. There you'll find a ridiculously easy question, so we're not making this too hard. We just want you to...
Is Billy Piper the answer?
Billy Piper, well, look, you've just given it away. We're going to have to come up with a new question now. So Eamon would have got that straight away. So no, we're going to come up with a new simple question, answer it, and you're in with a chance of winning this fantastic prize. Again, thanks to Carlsberg Unfiltered.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. And don't forget to subscribe to Ireland Unfiltered on all the usual channels.